Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Insurtech webinar. This is the webinar where we are going to talk about insure companies. The main theme of the webinar is how to reduce insurance risk for power industry. Let me present to you the speakers. Today, we are going to have Manuel Lemos, that is the CMO of Enline, Martin Andre, Alexandre Monte, that is from Infosistema, Felipe Vasconcelos, that is from our technical director from Enline, and Gabriel Pino, that is also our technical director from Enline. Our webinar agenda. Manuel Lemos is going to present how the world is changing. Martin Andre is going to present the impact of climate change in power industry. Alexandre Monte is going to present the data analytics impact on insurance industry. Felipe Vasconcelos is going to present risk management system with ERMS, and Gabriel Pino is going to present our use cases. In the end of the webinar, we are going to have questions and answers, and you are able to make questions in the bottom on the website we are now. And now I would like to invite Manuel Lemos to start the presentation.
Very well. Thank you very much for the introduction, Manuela. I'm very happy to participate in this webinar. I also am very thankful for the participation of everyone in this call today. And let's start about climate change. This is our daily in our lives now, about news about climate change, and we are living and experiencing these changes very fast in the last years. No, according to the IPCC, climate change is real, and this is caused by the human activities, mainly because of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And how we can see this? We can see basically because we know and we feel the changes in temperature. Basically all around the world, we can see these changes very clearly. And also the oceans are warming fast. And this is only the beginning. The projections until the end of the century are pointing increasing of the temperature, the global atmospheric temperature between 2.6 and 4.8 degrees, and the sea levels will rise in different areas in the world from a minimum of 0.45 centimeters and almost 1 meter. And this is something that we cannot change quickly. Even if we stop emissions now, as you know, the temperatures will go up, and even in the most optimistic scenario, the temperatures will be rising near to 5 degrees comparing to the last century. Before I give the word to my colleague, I would like to say that climate change exposes people, societies, and all economic sectors and ecosystems to risk. And today we are talking about risk. Risk is the potential for consequences when something of value is at stake or the outcome of is uncertain. Recognizing the diversity of values. Basically, this is written in this IPCC report. And before I give the word to my colleague, I would like to say that we are not conscious about the risk levels for the next century caused by the climate change. And today, we're going to have a deep focus on how to use technology to have risk management and help us to know what can happen and how to predict the risks that can affect our lives and assets, especially the power industry. Thank you very much. I invite my colleague to continue.
Hello from my side. I'm very happy to talk about what is the impact of climate energy in the power industry. As Manuel introduced, we are currently in a volatile and even in some areas of the world in a nearly chaotic situation. We have war situations, we have energy crisis in Europe, global growing inflation, and more countries with growing debt situation. So what is now the situation or the key findings for the power industry? The development of the emerging markets, the growth of electric vehicles, then also these initiatives for introducing heating pumps, investment plans of countries like China, India, which are having a big vision for generation. All this will bring the world to a greater and growing energy demand, which, of course, in the consequence, as long we have not another technology, will increase the global warming. On the other side, the industry is developing technologies to cut down climate change emissions, like renewables, of course, which becoming more and more efficient and also cost-effective, filter technologies, CO2 capture technologies, like storage, new storage materials and technologies, nuclear fusion, in order to only name some of it. However, renewables like solar power and wind put a big challenge on the grid by their volatility, and nevertheless, they need backups by nuclear or fossil-fired plants until we may have a hydrogen policy in the world. Now coming to the impacts and risks. As the risk levels are increasing, the impacts will be harder in the future on the power assets. And this is the topic of today. So many of the aforementioned aspects and most severe weather events impact the energy production and generation dramatically. Strong renewables, like, for example, hydropower, besides wind and solar, will have an increase in the future in many countries, but are, of course, extremely sensitive to weather patterns. If we take hydro, we can have years with drought, and in other years we have flooding. So that means to find the right balance is the point. And talking about electrical transmission and distribution grids and also pipelines, the impacts will increase and hit more and more the assets. Storms, wildfires, heating, icing, flooding threatening to foundations, etc., will come more and more to our, let's say, power assets. Next, please. So what can we do? I mean, what are the impacts and what are the adaptations and measures to be taken? If we talk about thermal power stations, there is a big issue with cooling water problems in the summer months, and also the need to adjust to reduce the CO2. If we think about power lines, be it transmission lines or distribution lines, they are exposed to extreme weather, higher risk of damages, and also this is a big issue for insurances, where we talk later about this. And then it's so important to monitor the status. And this is the most important, to have an idea about predictive functions to assume what could happen to the power line in case a severe weather event is coming up. Pipelines, Manuel mentioned, we have the issue of increasing weather. That means in coastal areas, there may be coming a risk to these lines. And then regarding frameworks, and here the governments are asked to adopt the national or even pan-national regularities, like as we have it in the European Union, to support the stakeholders to be able to adapt to the new scenarios in the future. Efficiency. We have the growing demand on electricity, even needs more to put efforts into measures that increase the efficiency and the flexibility and the resilience on the power of the power assets. And what is the core of all this? This, of course, is the investment in technology, the development of technologies. And now I'm with my last point, innovation technologies, and of course, the willingness to invest. This is the most important in order to change the situation, to correct the situation with the right technologies. And I'm here with at the end, and will give to the Alexandre for the next part to talk about what this means for risk management and also for insurances. Thank you, and please, Alex.
Thank you, Martin. Hope everyone can hear me well.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. First, I would like to thank Enline for inviting us to join this webinar. My name is Alexandre Dumont-Lee. I'm the CEO of Infosistema. Infosistema is a business and technology consulting company that is focused on digital transformation and innovation initiatives for the financial sector. We have been helping customers in the insurance ecosystem for the last 20 years and are proud to have collaborated with relevant players in the industry like Ageas, Generali, Zurich, Liberty, and Victoria, to name a few. Our solutions are focused on digital experience in the insurance ecosystem, from search optimization, quoting, underwriting, and contracting journeys to customer service and claims management. We build and deliver solutions that ensure seamless interactions and experiences and increase efficiency and effectiveness in the ecosystem. Infosistema belongs to Join Group, which is an international IT group of consulting, technology, and outsourcing companies with over 25 years of experience in banking, insurance services, and public sectors. Next slide, please. Okay, so I will follow up on Manuel's and Martin's presentation and look at the challenge from the insurance perspective. So companies that own or are responsible for power systems, when faced with increasing risks and the negative impact that arise from climate changes, will invest in insurance plans to mitigate risks that are tied to unpredictable, but nowadays more frequent events. Insurance companies, on the other side, and in particular actuaries and underwriters, will have to consider not only the increased frequency of events that are related to climate change, but also the increased correlation of those events and the resulting impact on the asset under insurance. And they will need to reflect it in the risk models and consequently in the policy pricing and conditions. Another dimension that is important to consider and is sometimes neglected is that critical failures and breakdowns in power systems usually have an impact downstream on other assets that are also insured. An example might be a fire that is ignited by a power transmission line failure that leads to the loss of crop fields, houses, and sometimes, unfortunately, human lives. So having digital twins of power systems enables the understanding in real time of the electrical, mechanical, and thermal behavior in each system part. Coupling data from the system with weather conditions and predictions, geographic characteristics, and historical failure patterns can have a huge impact on the control of risk factors, preventing the occurrence of negative events that otherwise might be seen as random or as a result of an unfortunate set of circumstances and coincidences. Suffice it to say that with these tools, insurance and reinsurance companies will have a clear understanding of the asset health and the related risk factors in real time, which opens the door for reducing policy exclusions and determining a more favorable policy premium for companies that hold power systems. Next slide, please. This is not a new concept in the insurance space. Similar approaches are being adopted in other insurance products. In the auto industry, for example, the use of telematics by connecting a box to the car that monitors the driver's behavior and driving routes allows for pay-as-you-drive pricing models and contributes to driving safety and a decrease in claims. And the same happens in the health space, where the use of monitoring equipment that shares data collected with the insurance company, together with healthy habits promotion, enables a win-win scenario for both the person and the insurer. A hot topic right now is cyber insurance, where tools that continuously monitor the security of IT infrastructures and critical systems and data of organizations can have an impact on risk assessment, validation, and monitoring performed by the insurance companies. Next slide, please. Okay. And to finalize, what we are currently validating with insurance and reinsurance companies worldwide is how a solution like the one Enline will describe in a few minutes can be beneficial to facilitate and reach an adjusted and adequate insurance plan for these kind of assets. Power systems that include transmission lines, power station, and railways. Our hypothesis is that insurance and reinsurance companies, to monitor continuously the asset health and risks, can, option one, demand as part of the insurance policy access in real time to the digital twin platform that is held by the insured company, or option two, can include the platform as part of the insurance policy premium and establish exclusions based on the asset health. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Felipe Vasconcelos, Technical Director of Enline. And now we're going to discuss a little bit on the Inline softwares regarding the risk management systems. So prior to discussing our solutions and different approaches, we can discuss the risk assessment by itself. So risk assessment is an important tool for the power system operator and for different areas, as Alex just told us. And typically, those risks occur affecting financially, environmentally, or age-related in terms of managing assets. So the aim of risk analysis basically is to identify contributors to these risks, and then to evaluate different strategies that can be taken to meet them. And then we are going to try as much as we can to reduce the probability of these causes impact negative consequences on these assets and ultimately on the human lives. And as we are discussing a minute ago, for insurance companies, predictive risk analysis is of great interest, as it can improve the management of premium payments, for instance, and those companies can become more and more competitive in those markets. Some important examples that we can discuss, we can talk about preventive and corrective maintenance as one of the most classic risk management that we have. Then we can discuss on lifetime modeling, and then even for a system or for different components. We have also solutions for monitoring and diagnostics. And then we can discuss configurations for protection systems to avoid faults, or even to localize different faults in a power system network. And one of the most important aspects, and that is affecting immensely power systems, is the effects of the weather. So we have the wind speeds, the wildfires, also the storms, the rain, the soil, the movement of the soil, and so on. And those effects are gaining more attention by different players, And here we're going to discuss some of these effects, especially on power systems. Then we have also ICT, so this is the information and communication technologies, both for hardware and software. We have different improvements with different technologies being requested as part of a big solution. And then more recently, we have the discussion to prevent antagonistic attacks. So we are mentioning, for instance, intentional electromagnetic interference. And now we have some different solutions that are emerging in the market, and this might arise as a topic of interest in the next few years. In many countries, it's important to mention, power system operators, for instance, in different companies are now obliged to annually provide the regulator a risk and vulnerability analysis in terms of reliability of their systems. Then they have to include in this analysis an action plan on how they can improve the reliability. So if we take the current scenario of the power market, we can say that this, combined with the performance-based tariff regulation, this has justified the emergence of different startups, such as Enline transmission and other different research and development projects for risk management. So in this scenario, we have two different basic approaches in terms of risk management. We can consider a component reliability model where we are going to analyze overhead lines, cables, transformers, generators, circuit breakers, in different components of the system. Also, we have the system reliability model. And for this, as we are analyzing a bigger picture in a holistic approach, we have different mathematical models where we can use to make different probabilistic analysis, such as Markov chains, network equivalents. We can enumerate all the possibilities and make this risk assessment. Also, we have the classic Monte Carlo simulation and many other approaches. And for all of these approaches, I'm going to discuss very briefly on some of our solutions. So to start with, we have a monitoring system solution, which we refer to as EMS, Inline Monitoring System, where we make a real-time monitoring by using only software, and we make diagnostics and predictive maintenance. So we can make this partnership with insurance companies, such as Infosistema, where we can provide them some information on how an asset is developing different types of failures throughout the time. And we provide this as a digital platform for monitoring for the whole line, knowing all the electrical, thermal, and mechanical status on each meter of the transmission line. So we have an holistic understanding of the whole system and for each of the components of these systems. For this, we use different algorithms as artificial intelligence techniques to make all of these predictive approaches. And we can estimate 24 hours ahead, 1 month ahead, or even 1 year ahead, or years ahead. So we have different approaches. Also, we have the solution for optimization, use reducing losses, and we can assess the lifetime of different equipment and also the efficiency and effectiveness of different equipment. We have solutions for new assets that are being built. So we're going to discuss on developing different assets as with the minimum capex, but with the higher safety levels. Also, we have solutions for identification and localization of failures. So we refer to as inline fault location, and we collect different electrical data, waveform records, and apply with inline proprietary algorithms in order to locate faults and different events considering, for instance, the condition of the weather, the wind speeds, or the seismologic events, and so on. And for this, please go back 2 slides. One more, please. So here we have on the screen a transmission line in our platform where we can see different alerts. So for one of these circles, we have different events where we classify from the levels 1 up to 4 on different levels of alerts. So we can see here the blue spots as level 1 alert for wind speeds, and we have one in purple color. This is for ampacity. So the ampacity level are above the limits. And then we have different types of alerts in terms of the company can do something prior to a failure. So this is one example of how our platform can identify different problems, different failures, and point at the place where this problem is emerging. Please, next slide. And here we can see we can say that we have software and hardware and everything combined, but the hardware that we are considering are all the classic hardware that every company has for monitoring, and this we can do by applying artificial intelligence, real-time modeling and monitoring, and in order to identify potential issues on real time. So for this, we can see an application for vegetation management. And here on this screen, we can see different spots with different areas that are of interest, where we can make an approach to model how this vegetation grow for the following month, for the following year, or for the following decades, in order to allow the company to send someone to make some inspections, reduce costs for these inspections, and then to make all this planning, modeling, and planning and scheduling in optimal way. So this solution combines on-ground meteorological data with high-resolution multi-spectral satellite images to offer this kind of visibility and forecast on the vegetation growth around transmission and distribution grids. So for this case, we apply artificial intelligence in order to allow this detailed identification of vegetation classes, proximity to assets, and determine in real time and predictively the potential risk impact on the availability of these assets. So for this solution, we prioritize clearing and corrective maintenance activities in order to optimize the economic side, and also all of the resources, the human resources for inspection, for the use of drones, if this is the case of a company, or the use of a helicopter flight, and so on. And then we can schedule regularly different planning plans to indicate the exact areas where the vegetation team must cut the vegetation around the assets. And for this solution, we use intelligent mapping technology, and then we make this digital twin of the whole area in order to issue predictive alerts, and then mitigate risks by issuing a scheduling plan for planning. And please, the next slide. Here we can see that we have different solutions for active and reactive statuses, and then by managing all the data on real time, we can be proactive. And I mean by this that we can predict issues and then take actions in order to avoid any kind of failure. So this is a case for flooding, and then we can manage the level of the lake or the sea close to an asset, and this can represent risks to different types of assets. One of the important things All of these solutions are artificial intelligence based. So we have a large flexibility on manage different types of parameters, since electrical, mechanical, or thermal parameters, in combination with weather forecasts and weather parameters. Please, next slide. Here we can see one screen of our vegetation management, and then we can see different spots on how the vegetation is growing around a different transmission line for this particular case. And there's a spot market where we can see the height of the closest tree to this transmission line, which is around 7 to 8 meters. And then we have different algorithms running on the back end in order to classify those risks and issue different types of alerts. And for this, we have, I can finish that. We have a different package of different solutions for risk management. And we see this as the future of power system companies and also oil and gas, mining, and other different sectors. Now I would like to introduce Gabriel Pino, which is our CTO. And thank you very much for the invitation, for being here today.
Hi, thank you, Felipe. And so today we're going to present some study cases, especially for customers that use some of our products. And here we can see the study case coming from Las Bambas, which is an installation located in Peru. This is an interesting installation because of the high demand of high availability. This is a line that connects the Peruvian power grid to a mining company. This is one of the biggest copper mining companies in the world. And because of the type of industry and the industrial process, they demand continuous and steady state operation. So they rely on voltage quality. And this voltage quality is immensely dependent on the characteristics of the line, because on big changes on the route of this line, this is crossing different topographic areas in the mountains, in the Andes Mountains. So what we did is an entire modeling of this line, considering topography, type of towers, type of cables, geometries, silhouettes, and also the clearance between cables and ground. All these analyses to manage and calculate risks. And these risks are especially related to the length of this line. This line requests transpositions, requests the consideration of mutual effects between circuits. That's why we model this. One of the outcomes of this evaluation was evaluating the weather risk associated to this line. So we collected wind speed, wind direction, and also air temperature to evaluate this ampacity distribution along the time and also along the distance. So we could see not just thermal limits, but other different type of limits, like electrical limits, very limiting this line, especially voltage oscillation, what kind of combinations of active and reactive power that were allowed. And we could correlate all these time series of weather variables with the actual capacity of this line. Another outcome from this risk management was answering one question. Should we refurbish this line or not? Depending on the weather situation, how this weather is changing along the time, what is the historical time series that we should analyze to predict what is going to happen for the next years? And then should we or should we not refurbish this line? With the dynamic line rating associated to the engineering design, we could answer this question. And that's today we are monitoring Las Bambas transmission line located in Peru. Next one, please. Okay, this next project is associated to solar farms. This is a trend, especially in the Brazilian power grid, where we are evaluating also the need of refurbishment of existing installations. So the situation is the customer already has a solar farm installed, already has a transmission line that is dispatching all the generated power, and we care about the capacity of this line according to the weather change. And then this specific customer asked us, what is the amount of new photovoltaics, new solar panels that we should consider in the design without refurbishing the line. And without refurbishing the line, we have to evaluate what is the maximum capacity. And again, one of the key differences here is really to manage this risk, to evaluate what is the maximum capacity. And this maximum capacity is related not just with the weather limits, but electrical limits. In this project, we had not so high voltage installation, which was 138 kVs. So we should care about voltage regulation, voltage quality, efficiency, electrical efficiency, because this customer is being paid in the connection to the power grid, not at the generating point. So we had to consider all these effects to evaluate the need of a refurbishment or not in case of expansion of this existing solar farm. One of the outcomes of this product, please go back, Bruno. One of the outcomes of this product was really the probability evaluation. So along the time, considering the time series that we requested from these weather variables, what was the risk, the probability to overload the existing line? What is the possible combination of active and reactive power that this line can dispatch along the time, considering the weather that already happened, and also the predictive time series of these most important weather variables like air temperature, wind speed, wind direction, solar radiation, especially in this region where we have a lot of solar radiation. And then with this probability, this risk analysis, the customer could take a decision if he's going to buy or not more solar units to the existing solar farm. Next one, Bruno, please. Okay. This last study case is about Insuretech. This is the biggest TSO in Peru. And they had a very big problem because of an earthquake that happened in the coastal region of Peru. This was a big line, approximately 500 kilometers, 500 kVs, and they had this problem with availability. And this availability problem was caused by a fault, caused also by this earthquake. And since this problem was complex, because of several points affected by the seismic movements, conventional fault locators were not able to locate this problem, this fault. And we could analyze the time series, the waveforms coming from the digital recorders to evaluate exactly where this problem happened. And this kind of solution is tailor-made. We had to analyze the installation to evaluate these risks along the line. For example, considering transposition points where this line is crossing mountain ranges, When this is considered, for example, the reflection of these waveforms with a specific numerical model to evaluate the fault position. So we could locate this fault with high accuracy, minimizing this risk by locating and solving the problem, clearing the problem without too much unavailability time. With ordinary solutions, they got more than 1 week of unavailability, and we could solve this problem in a matter of minutes. So with this, I close these 3 study cases, and I open for questions and answers, please.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Now let's move to the question and answers part. I'm going to attend to the questions that are in chat first. And the first question we have is from David Souza Marins. And he asks in Portuguese, but I'm going to read in English so you guys can answer in English too. He asks, how are the parameters provided by Enline validated if there is no sensors installed in the transmission line? I invite Felipe Vasconcelos to answer these questions. This question, Felipe, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Manuela, and thank you for your question, David. For this case, we use every type of measurement a typical substation has. So different data from current transformers and voltage transformers. And then we use also measurements for active and reactive power. So voltages and currents, basically. And if it's available, a more evolved kind of monitoring, for instance, with PMU, phasor measurement units, then we can use this type of data. So we do not ask for our customers that they have to add any kind of hardware, but we use what they have. And we have a very high kind of flexibility to make different types of very accurate modeling with the typical monitoring systems and ICT systems that these companies already has. So I would summarize my answer to this. And I hope this satisfies your question. Thank you very much.
David also complemented his question, asking, he says that he understands that the data collected feeds some kind of artificial intelligence in the transmission line, but he wonders if the estimated temperature data, operational capacity, and etc. has already been validated in some way. I guess Gabriel Pino can answer this question.
Okay, David. This data
Thank you, Gabriel.
Has already been validated with many different customers. I can give you one example. We participated in one data validation in Spain where they isolated one span, they injected a different level of currents using diesel generators, also associated with capacitor banks, transformers banks, to compensate the mutual effects of the line without causing damages to the diesel generators. And we had access to the electrical mechanical data of the line, for example, resistance, the distance between the spans, the distance between the line, so the span distance. And we also could evaluate how the weather changed along the time. With the time series of weather and evaluating the electrical mechanical parameters by the electrical time series, we could calculate precisely the cable temperature and the sag along the tests. You also asked for this paper that I have just talked about. Unfortunately, this is data coming from our customer and we cannot share. but we are more than glad to show you this customer to talk about. No problem at all. I thank you for your question, David.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Felipe. We also have a question from Nelson Nobre, and he asks, how insurers evaluate risk mitigation strategy for power transmission using this kind of monitoring tools? How can utilities IPP understand that in their insurance policies? I guess Alexandre can answer this question, please.
Yeah. First of all, let me share that what got our attention in the first place when we met Enline the first time is the fact that insurance companies can monitor continuously the asset that is under insurance. So we agree that these kind of tools are, in first place, very important to the companies that actually hold the power systems. But from the conversations that we had after the initial contact is that usually when these companies approach an insurance company, an insurance plan will be built and a team of specialists from the insurance company will be called to evaluate the risks that actually the asset has in that moment. And then they will use statistical models and information that is shared even international based on indexes and information like that to build an insurance policy. And most of the times there's a lot of exclusions because usually the kind of events that happen in this kind of assets are understood most of the times. There's a lot of randomness in those events. And what we believe is that sometimes what leads to an event like that is a chain of different sub-events, and some of those sub-events could be avoided in the first place. Okay, so what we found interesting and what we are validating, and I have to mention that we are still evaluating how we can use this kind of tools in insurance companies because it's a pretty new field. It's not a new field in auto insurance, not a new field in health, but it is in this kind of assets. Is how can we insurance companies and companies that hold this kind of assets work together and collaborate in order to have a continuously monitoring of that asset. Okay? And having that information could prevent not only events, accidents that could occur in that asset, but all the other assets that may be impacted by those kind of events.
If I could add also a comment, por favor, Alexandre, is that we are able, for example, to locate steady states over voltages. So if we collect electrical data from the field, from the substations, and then model this line, we can evaluate where do we have over voltages. And I mean here 1.05, 1.08 PUs of voltages that may lead to a short circuit. So this is the amount of risk to lead to an availability that we are submitted. And this we can measure, not even the intensity of these over voltages, but how long the installation is submitted to this kind of risky operation.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. And now in the question bottom, we have a question from Felipe Silveira, and he asks, how to manage the risks by digital twin technology? I'd like to invite Martin Andre to answer this question. Martin?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
I mean, what we have heard so far in this webinar, the digital twin is basically when it's operated, basically showing on each meter of the line the status of the line. That means in current voltage, even temperature, of course, any failure situation. So by this we have a very good picture or image of the transmission line and the parameters. And this is exactly the input to the artificial intelligence in order then to calculate if some of these parameters or one of these parameters is changing, that then the artificial intelligence can calculate if there is appearing a risk in the near future. So, and this is exactly what is this digital twin technology enabling for this, let's say, foreseeing the future. And we have only seen this possible with this technology, and therefore we are very sure that this will be coming more and more, and also, let's say, required from insurance companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Our next question comes from Nair Mendonça, and she asks, is it possible to use this technology in our home? I think Manuel Lemos could answer this question for us. Manuel, please.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Is it possible to use this technology in our home?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes and no. Depending of the application. Today, our solutions are basically B2B and B2 government. Okay, we are not working with a B2C approach today. However, we are talking about a risk management webinar, not specifically about our solutions. We are talking about a general topic. And yes, the application of digital twin solution and digital technologies in a macro view will be part of our lives and are already part of our lives, because many insurance companies and digital companies are offering solutions for our daily lives, not only for our homes, but for our let's say, lives, let's say. How can we give one or two examples of how this technology can be used in our homes? First, let's see a building like apartments building somewhere in the world, New York. If we see a building as a community where we have like 200 apartments, for example, and we have 1 megawatt of demand, we can create the digital twin of this building, and we can, using the sensors from the connection to the street to each apartment, we can make an overall digital platform showing everything what is happening. And with artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can even predict risks. We can predict short circuits. We can avoid fires in the building. We can reduce losses. And we can really help these persons, these houses, and these communities reducing risk. A second example, very quickly, before I finish, is applicable for railways or highways. We have a lot of sensoring already implemented, and if we apply the vegetation management solution, for example, we can help these companies to make a better management about the vegetation along the highways. Why not to have a tool to predict if a tree will fall in a highway, and if I can avoid accidents with these prediction capabilities? These are only a few examples. The conclusion of my answer is that yes, these technologies will be applicable to our homes and our lives in a very, let's say, singular point of view. And we're going to see many companies offering systems like this in the future, more and more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel. I'm going to keep with you, Manuel, and asks the Bruno Chagas question. And he asks, what's the price model? Can you please answer this question?
Very well. Yes. The pricing model for the inline solutions are based in software as a service. Up to now, Enline is using the software as a service pricing model in, I think, almost 100% of our contracts. However, we have been in contact with several companies, especially in the insurance side, asking to have different business models like pay-per-use and also insurance let's say a different point of view that is basically paying for predictive data. If we detect something in the future, each event detected is paid. It's more or less a pay-per-use, but also pay-per-use of predictive data. No, from the point of view Enline, we are extremely flexible and we accept different business models. And I think that more and more we're going to see pay-per-use models, and of course we're going to be using the software as a service, which is basically more flexible and easy to use, but always open for different pricing models in case a specific customer asks.
Thank you. We had one more question from Nelson Nobre that I'd like to invite Gabriel Pino to answer. And Nelson asks, regarding to atmospheric electrical discharges and corona effect, how your solutions see it?
Okay, thank you, Nelson. So regarding atmospheric discharge, we have electromagnetic transient models that are going to evaluate what is the impact of this discharge along the line. So these are distributed models, and we can see how these waves are going to behave along the line. So for example, if we know that there is a probability to have a discharge in tower number 40, and this tower is located at position X and Y, we can evaluate what is going to be the voltage difference between the phase cables and the reference. And the reference here we can call like the metallic structures of the towers, or the voltage difference between phases, and then evaluate the risk to have a disruption. And this disruption will cause a short circuit and consequently an unavailability period for this line.
Thank you, Gabriel. And now our last question from Samuel Souza. Why sensorless systems? What are the benefits of this sort of solution? I'd like to invite Manuel or Gabriel to answer these questions. Maybe you both
can start. I can start. What I think the benefits are easy to see. No, if I can create a digital twin without additional sensors, first, I don't need to go to that place. Second, I don't need to pick with me sensors to that place. I don't need to buy sensors. I don't need to have any kind of activity in the field. And then the question is, can I trust in a digital twin without sensors? And the answer is yes, because the physics and mathematics modulation we are using are very, very, very detailed. And we always invite our customers to make their own field tests. And if the field tests are not matching with the information of the digital twin, we also invite our customers to resign the contract and we give the money back. This is the principle. We are not supplying a technology that cannot be faced and compare it with the reality. And the reality are the field measurements. And this is, I can say that 100% or almost 100% of our customers ask this. And this is the answer is a unique physics and mathematics matricial modulation that is able to give a high, precise, and accurate values compared to field measurements in the field. I think I answered, but Gabriel.
Okay, I can even give a counter example. Let's take one example here, a 500 kV line with 4 conductors per phase. And you want to evaluate if this line is transmitting maximum capacity in one specific span. Are you going to install this sensor in one cable? You have 4 cables per phase. Are you going to install this sensor in one cable? If this is correct, I am glad to mention you that the distribution of currents in the cables of the same phase are not uniform. It's not equal. So you're not going to have 250 amperes per cable in a phase if you are wanting to transmit 1000 amps. That's why we have these electromagnetic imbalances between cables. So if we use all these mathematical models to understand the behavior of each cable at each position of the line, we can evaluate really this maximum capacity. And there is also a limit from these sensors. You are not able to install these every span, every cable, and there is also a limit from the voltage level. There is a electromagnetic phenomena that will affect on the components of these equipments. So you cannot install these in a 500 kV or a 750 kV. So this is why we have these limitations with sensors. When with mathematical models, we are very much more flexible to implement this and model different phenomena.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Thank you very much, Gabriel. And thank you everyone for the questions. We are going to finish our webinar now. I'd like to invite you all to follow us in our social media. The links are already in the chat of this webinar. Sooner, we are going to have more and more webinars. And if you are interested, you can follow us, you can talk to us. And if you have any more questions, you can send us by email, by LinkedIn, and our social media is always open to receive every one of you. Thank you very much for the presence. Thank you for the presentation.
Power grids are the most important, versatile, and efficient way of delivering energy. But utilities and grid operators are facing enormous challenges today. Weather volatility, wildfire and natural disasters, electrical and mechanical failures, unreliable and congested energy transmission. Trends like distributed energy, renewables, and digitalization are changing the power industry at a breathtaking rate, forcing utilities to increase competitiveness and managing increasingly critical operating scenarios. GML is introducing Enline, the ultimate digital twin software for power transmission assets that allow you to master these challenges. From the design of a new transmission line to the daily operation, maintenance, and modernization. Enline's digital solutions were developed by specialists in power systems, together with transmission line design engineers, operators, and maintenance professionals. Enline's digital twins provide a comprehensive understanding of electrical, mechanical, and thermal behavior in each span of the transmission line, without requiring the installation of sensors. The entire process is done remotely by our experts, without mobilization to the field, without need of face-to-face meetings, with no need of sensors or hardware. No more visual inspections or drone flights needed. Within a few days, we can convert any transmission line located anywhere in the planet into a digital twin asset.